JavaScript does a lot of weird stuff. I think we all already know that. We have all seen a million tweets of people showing stupid things that JavaScript does that you would not expect. That said, there's a lot of examples of these which you're probably never actually going to run into. For instance, is it weird that the type of document.all is undefined, even though obviously document.all is not undefined? Yes, of course that is weird. Oops, let me fix that. Yes, of course that is weird, but I don't know how often I have to check the type of document.all, so I mean, fun to look at, but probably not something I'm too worried about. That said, I spent a little bit of time and dug through a bunch of examples that I've seen people post from different blog posts and stuff, and tried to find 8, 10, 12 or so different examples of things that I have either actually ran into myself or could see myself accidentally running into at some point. So let's take a look at those. So one thing that actually kind of makes sense is that the type of an array is an object. Once you understand that everything is an object under the hood, like if you wanted to come and dig through like the prototypal tree and see, you could actually find for an array that eventually under the hood it becomes an object, so that totally makes sense. But there are some types which you would not really expect to be an object which are. So by example, the type of null is an object, which null really feels more like a primitive type, but it is not in JavaScript. That said, this is not particularly consistent. So the type of nan, for example, is the last thing that you would ever expect it to be. It is a number. Now, generally with numbers or like with primitive types, you can compare them to each other. So you could do like 0 is equal to 0, and these are going to be equal to each other because it's just checking like the raw value. If I wanted to check like the string 1 is equal to the string 1, that's going to give me back true as well. But that is not the case with nan. So if I did nan is equal to nan, this is going to give me back false, which is super odd. Fortunately, there is a conveniently named function called isNaN, which is meant to solve this problem. And if you pass in nan, it's going to give you back true. If you pass in absolutely nothing, it's going to give you back true. And if you pass in undefined, it's also going to give you back true. So that is not particularly useful. What you have to remember whenever you want to use the isNaN function is that there's a difference between just isNaN and number.isNaN. So if I did this, now it's giving me false for nothing, and undefined is giving me false as well, which is what we actually want. Then only if I actually pass in the value nan will it give me back true. Rapid fire, so let's move on really quick. One other one that I'm sure many of you have seen is that you get some weird behavior whenever you try to do math between strings and numbers. So if I did 10 plus 1, it's going to convert this 1 into a string, which I suppose makes sense. But if you try to do the same thing, the casting is not going to work the same all the time. So if I did 10 minus 1, for instance, it's going to cast it into a number instead of a string. And you're going to get 10 minus 1 is 9 instead of whatever I guess you would expect that to do. I guess throw an error would make more sense. I have no idea. But moving on. This next one you might not run into as often, or maybe not at all, but it's still kind of fun to look at anyways. If you try to compare an object is equal to an array, it's going to give you a syntax error. But if you do the exact opposite, so if I just did an array is equal to an object, it's actually going to give me false. So this is pretty odd. Fortunately, this is not the same when you actually are comparing them as variables, which is probably what you're going to do. So if I did something like let, L1 is equal to an array, and then let L2 or something is equal to an object, and then I compared these, do L1 is equal to L2, that's going to give me back false. Then if I did the exact opposite, so L1, L2 like this, it's also going to give me back false. So not one that you have to remember as much, but it is kind of funny. I don't know if I've ever ran into this one, but anyways, moving on. One other example that I'm sure you've seen tweeted or something before, seen other videos on, is this, which is 0 plus 1 or 0.1 plus 0.2. Try to compare that to 0.3, and that's going to give you back false. Reason being, if I just do 0.1 plus 0.2, you're going to get 0.3, blah, 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 4. This is not necessarily just a JavaScript thing. I will leave some links in the description to videos which explain why this happens. A little bit more of a conversation than we're going to have in this video. But anyways, moving on. Next kind of odd thing, the type of operator is always going to give you back a string for the value. So if I did like the type of 1000, that type is number. So you need to be very careful to never accidentally try and check the type of something, because that's going to give you back a string every single time. I know this one sounds stupid, but I've actually done exactly this on accident before. This next one is kind of another example similar to the equality between like an arrays and objects and stuff like that whole kind of thing. And that's doing addition between arrays and objects and stuff. So if I did something like an array plus an object, it's going to give me object, object, cool. If I did something like an array plus an array, it's going to give me an empty string, because obviously that makes sense. If I did something like an object plus an array, let's see what that does. Object plus array, that's going to give me 0, because of course it does. And then finally, if I did an object plus an object, that's going to give me back NaN. So no consistency here at all. Now, finally, for one that I've actually run into while practicing like algorithms and data structures and stuff for interviews is some kind of oddness with array.fill. So let's look at an example. Let's pretend we wanted to create an array of a specific size. The way that we might do that is we could do like, say, my array is equal to, I already have an example here, cool, array of size 3. And now if I just check my array, we're gonna see what that looks like. It's just an array of size 3 and it's completely empty. Cool. Now if I wanted to actually fill that, I would do my array dot fill, and we could pass in some kind of value here. So we could do like, fill this with the number 1 over and over again. And I could say my array at index 1 is equal to the string 1, 2, 3, whatever. Cool. Now if I check the value of my array, it's going to look exactly how we would expect. 1 and then our string at index 1 and then another 1. Now I will clear this really quick. Where this gets weird is if we want to create an array of arrays or an array of objects or something. So if I did array.fill and maybe I wanted to fill this with another array of 0, 0, 0, something like this. You might need to do this for some kind of like graph traversal problem or something. So I have this 2-dimensional array now. And now let's pretend like I wanted to change one of those values. So let's say I wanted to change the very first index of the first index of this array. So like the very first array and the first value. The way that I would do that is I would say my array at 0 to get the first array, and then 0 again to get the actual value, and set that equal to, say, the number 1. Well, that looks like it worked, but now if we actually check our array, we will see that it changed the value of all 3 of them. So all 3 of them have been changed to 1, 0, 0. Now, the reason that this happens is this isn't exactly doing what you think it's doing. So you would imagine that this is going to create 3 separate arrays, all of length 3 with all zeros, but it's not actually doing that. You can imagine this is doing something similar to this. It's actually going to do like, say, whatever, I'll just call it test is equal to 0, 0, 0, and then my array dot fill, and then pass in test. So it's actually using the same reference to the same array for all 3 of your indices. And because these are the same reference to the same exact array, changing one of them is going to change all of them. And that is going to be it for this one. I would love to hear in the comments any other examples that you guys have in the situations which led you to running into some of these kind of weird behaviors in JavaScript. I will leave a couple of links in the description for other resources you can look at, some of the resources that I looked at to find some of these examples, and how you can learn about why some of these examples are how they are. But beyond that, I think that is going to be it for this one, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.